ambition.
Soup plus Dale fish. Hershey Squirts incoming. I'm
Do you
fine.
hear
I've had sushi that's been 2-3 days old. I have a strong stomach.
It's
Okay, it's loud.
restless.
I have a strong stomach if it wasn't obvious from
Ambition
nasty drinks,
requires men
which I keep rolling
to
for some
feed
reason.
upon. It also needs time. Direction. And sacrifice. But for every man who fulfills his calling, there are thousands left with nothing. It's them who knock and open the door to hell.
What you guys didn't know is that this is actually live footage of Chicago. It's the yellow fry asher. Fish is black, unless deep fried. I like sushi. I never used to like sushi. I don't know, a few summers ago, I was kind of like, oh, I'm in the mood to try sushi again. And then I was like, well, that's all she wrote. All right, and then a gameplay trailer from a few months ago. More like Seattle.
Stewart!
God damn, that's loud.
Stewart!
Almighty Stewart. Do you hear us, Stewart?
Do you hear us?
Stewart, are you listening? Stewart?
What is that, Stewart?
The great storm wiped the world clean.
Let's take it back.
But how?
The steward will choose our path.
Stewart, build us a better home.
A home for everyone! Stewart, we still lack so many things.
People are starving.
More people, more mouths to feed.
They treat us like animals, left to suffocate.
We need a place to work.
Who else will feed our families?
Steward, this squalor will kill her.
Steward!
Where are the homes you've promised?
Can we all receive equal rations?
Hospitals.
Well,
not
Cabbage sounds
space
more
for
like Wildbear's asking for it, not getting
education
housing.
for our children.
Secure and stable growth. City for the citizens.
Steward, hear your people.
We want a say in how we run the city.
The time of
City.
tyranny has ended.
Our delegates will make sure of that.
Let them vote.
Yes, vote.
Steward,
Do you hear us?
Steward.
Stewart, what about us?
What?
Impossible.
Stewart?
Yes, Daddy.
Did you hear that?
Stewart.
The city. The city was not.
All right. Frostpunk 2 comes out on July 27th. They did, which, as grateful as I am for the trip, and as much fun as I had, and as excited as I am for Frostpunk 2, which I'll play the shit out of, they did do the whole digital deluxe equals 3-4 days early access. Not a fan of more and more developers doing that. Just not anything to do particularly with 11-bit, but I really hope they stop doing it. The problem is they won't because, well, people buy it, right? People complain, but then buy it anyways. So, you know, Final Fantasy's doing it, Frostpunk's doing it, Diablo did it. Like, it's just becoming more and more common now. That being said, if you do get early access, it's on the 22nd of July. Simpsons did it. Oi, Nico. You're complaining? I know. I'm literally a part of the problem. But also, in my business of streaming for a living, imagine not doing that when everybody else is already streaming it. Like, I don't have the numerical kahunas to be like, you know what, chat? I'm going to make an example out of this. I'm not buying Elden Ring DLC early access just to prove a point. Then I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go to this guy. Did they give me a copy? No, not yet. Anyways, so 22nd. Okay, so I want to preface this by laying out a couple of things that we kind of talked a bit about before. They also gave some like nice little just graphic beauty shots and stuff of the game. The game is very pretty, and it ran a little better than in beta. Beta wasn't bad, right? But beta was like mostly 60, and then all of a sudden it would dip. And I actually talked to them about it, and they're very aware of that. And it's something that they've been working on a lot for like any performance issues and stuff. They said they got it to even run decently on integrated graphics. Now, does that mean now literally every like CPU rig combo in the world is going to be totally fine? No. Inevitably there's going to be some kind of like graphics card whatever combo that's just like shit performance and someone's not going to be happy. But for the most part, they seem pretty confident that, or will be pretty confident that, like in general, it'll be fine. And that's, by the way, cranked on like max graphics and stuff. So the game is very, very pretty, as you can see.
Blizzard!
It's just, it's not, well, technically there's a blizzard, but not the lawsuit kind. And well, thank you for the 75, brother. So yeah, the game's awesome looking. It performed well. You know, it's like what we saw in beta, but just like nice and more crisp and better FPS and all that kind of stuff. So definitely a cool atmosphere. It's just a more modern graphic version of Frostpunk 1. There's just like a few of these beauty shots, as they call them. Other thing I want to preface, the bigger deal that a lot of players talked about, including myself during beta, and gave feedback about and are worried about and all that kind of stuff with the gameplay, the direction, the systems, all that kind of stuff. So
An automaton has broken down and is blocking traffic. Technicians are on their way.
As you can see, the cities are also become much larger too. So where to start with this? So after playing the beta, a lot of people gave feedback. They had like a survey thing, including us. We did it on stream. We gave feedback. And their average reviews from said feedback, which they say they got a lot of, was 8 out of 10. They are pleased with this, but obviously any game, especially that puts a lot of love, well, any developer wants their game to be 10 out of 10. So, you know, it was motivation for them to fix more of the stuff that people like had qualms about and want improvement on and some stuff. That being said, there are some things that... Oh, I will also preface on a personal note. I love Frostpunk 1. We played the shit out of Frostpunk 1. In fact, as per our upcoming 2-month schedule-ish, we are going to do another playthrough of Frostpunk 1. Yes, all DLCs, Corey. Yeah, I've done all the DLCs. We're going to do another full playthrough of Frostpunk 1 a few weeks, couple weeks, whatever, before Frostpunk 2. Just because I love it, and it's a good mood setter, and we'll probably do like hard mode challenges and all that kind of stuff. So, I've had a lot of time with Frostpunk 1, and I loved it to death. So, I understand any complaints or worries or whatever. I have a good foundation for it as well, so I wasn't just some random dude that doesn't know about the game that I got invited out, and I was like, oh, this looks like it'll be a fun game kind of thing. Like, I have a lot of heart and time investment into the franchise as well. That being said, with the feedback that they got from beta, there are some things that feedback was given about that they are taking into consideration, they've already worked on, blah, blah, blah. And there's some things that straight up, as far as I know, it will be on Mac. Oh, and that's, you just reminded me as well. If you guys have any questions at any point, feel free to just throw it out. If I don't get to it right away, sorry, but I will get to it, because I know some people are obviously curious about stuff. And I was given a great opportunity to experience these things and then relay the info to you guys. So if you have questions about anything, feel free to shoot. I will do my best to answer it. Also, I'm going to go to our Frostpunk 2 overlay, which is just this, just so I don't block UI stuff. Feel free to shoot and I'll answer what I can. So I finished all the campaigns in 1, and I believe they will have Mac on release as well. So what I wanted to say with this preface was that there are some things that some people didn't like that they are working on. There are some things that people didn't like of the people that didn't give it an 8 out of 10 maybe gave it less or gave some critical feedback despite liking the game, that ours is not going to change, okay? And that is from a design perspective. So they got feedback on a few major things, but amongst them, a lot of the questions and feedback were things related to micro versus macro. So no longer assigning, the children to the coal mines and one worker to one building and that kind of stuff. And the way that the building grid and system work, like building around circular, around a heat map, etc. Right now you just kind of like chisel out ice and go to deposits and stuff like that. Those aren't changing on purpose. And the reason is, and I sat down with the devs, I sat down with actually quite a few people to talk about this. Overall, their approach to Frostpunk 2 was not like, they did not want to make Frostpunk 1 Part 2. They did not want to make Frostpunk 1 DLC. They're happy with Frostpunk 1 kind of being its own thing and having its own stuff, and Frostpunk 2 still being a similar thing in the same universe, in whatever, but like the next chapter of things. Okay? Oi, Kale. What's up, brother? And the reason for that was, the further, especially lore reason for that was, because from a conceptual standpoint, in the first game, they focused on survival against the elements and human survival and like banding together against the cold and stuff. Thematically, that's obviously still a thing, as you'll see or have seen in beta. There's still temperature drops. They're still cranking the generator in the middle, etc., etc. But the focus now thematically in the game, now that humanity has like survived, and thrived is probably a too aggressive word, but let's say survived, the next issue is not just survival against the elements, but survival against each other, against humanity, against society, against whatever, right? So they wanted to move in a more macro direction of managing people rather than managing just resources and buildings against the cold. And this was one of the major drives as to why you were getting a more macro scale of thing instead of micro, which, again, some people will like, some people won't. Some people will like both, is what it is. Based on the reviews, most people liked it. I, myself, loved Frostpunk 1. After playing this even more, I liked the beta a lot. I did give them a little bit of criticism on the beta being way too short at 300 days, and they agreed. They just didn't... They agreed that they kind of missed the mark a bit on that. Let's just put it that way. But it is what it is. Future learned. Future story... lesson learned. They're okay. Like, it's understandable that some people are just going to like the old one better because maybe you just prefer micro more than macro. It is what it is. But from a standalone game perspective, let's just say like Frostpunk 1 never existed. The game is great. It's awesome. But if you're like really, really married to like the main thing I ever liked about Frostpunk was putting kids in the coal mines, yeah, you're probably going to be a little disappointed because it's just different, man. It's just different. So the game, here, I can start our little B-roll video in the meantime and just pause and talk like we did with Altars. The game undoubtedly has moved towards a more macro environment, okay? So instead of you have 20 workers and 5 children and 5 amputees, and you need to manage properly coal and wood and all that kind of stuff. How do you shift them? And on a moment-by-moment gameplay, where do you shift them? That doesn't exist anymore. Let me go to like an actual UI screenshot, maybe further in actually. So that doesn't exist anymore. Now you have populations in the hundreds and thousands. And population, although it was a resource before, is a little more of a hands-off resource. It's more of like a finite resource that you just need to have in order to fill like working buildings, which we'll go through with the gameplay a bit later on, or soon. Also, days, like each working day and hour, you remember in the original game, you'd have like, you know, shifts start at 8 a.m., whatever. I forget exactly what it was. Ends at like 8 p.m. And then you can, you know, pass different laws or trigger different buildings individually to be like, hey, you guys stay overtime, double shift, blah, 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 on like a day-by-day micro basis. The game is now in macro scale time. So instead of days passing, weeks are the units that pass in the game. So if you can see in like the top left, if this Windows crap would go away. If you can see in the top left, see how quickly the days are passing? So most measurements in the game are done in weeks, okay? They're done in like, this research is going to take 25 weeks instead of 25 days. That being said, the implication of a daily micro of like double shifts, staying late, overtime, etc., still exists, but it exists on a more macro scale that you trigger an entire sector for. So you go, hey, this industrial sector here, because you build sectors, this place does overtime. So you turn that whole thing on. And it's a bit less of a, like, you need to Hawkeye it every day to make sure you're not fucking up. Kind of. You still do, because the game's really fucking hard. But, so it's less of that kind of micro, okay? So micro decreased. Did they say why? Yeah, I started this entire presentation with why. They're moving to a more macro scale. Why? Because I'll further get to it in a moment, but like I've explained a bit of that why. But just to reiterate, it's because the focus of the game is now more survival and society and political based rather than just resource and building based. So you still have like elements of resource management and all that kind of stuff. That's not going anywhere. You could see at the top of the screen, sorry, it's kind of like blurred with the thing, but you still have coal, fuel. You still have housing. You still have food. I've actually introduced a couple of new things. You have like materials and goods. There's coal. So you still have all that kind of management, but it's managed as like more of a macro base wide thing rather than individual building thing. So that being said, one of the other observations, not really complaint, but clear observation is, remember in the original, you would build in kind of like a grid system, like a circular grid permeating away from the center. You don't really have that anymore. You still have the center. Obviously you can see right here, like the generator in the center. You still have that, but it's more of just a unit. This is just the generator area. And then you build in a hex system now. Let me see if I can get any footage of them building. You build in a hex system now. And proximity doesn't really matter, but there are other elements to the building that are new that didn't exist in the old one. So for instance, if you build, there's like 4 types of sectors. You can see it right here. It's actually a good area right here. So when you build your different sectors, there's like synergy and anti-synergy, or like, you know, bad shit that happens depending on which sectors you layer next to each other. For example, if you're building housing for residents, right? If you build the housing hexes to go alongside the furnace, if you build enough of the initially 6 segments of housing, 3 of them minimum, along the generator area, they'll share heat, and therefore the housing district that you build will require less heat than a housing district that you just build by itself in the middle of nowhere. So there's still micro efficiency that you can do for that. So what happens when you build a second housing district, which is this blue one down here, by the way? What happens when you build a second housing district? Well, if you layer it next to the other housing district and next to the generator, you're going to benefit heat from the generator, and you're going to benefit heat from the neighbors as well. So you further microed less coal and less heat requirement for those areas. So you need to know where you want to build ahead of time a little, or at least you need to consider where you want to build a little before building so that you can min-max this thing. I personally played, so we were given episode, or like chapter 1, and we were given chapter 2. And the footage in this is from kind of both chapters. And we were allowed all the difficulties and no restrictions, stuff like that. I played on hard mode, which was the hardest available, because you know me, I like to play on hard mode. It was really tough. Like, I failed the first map once or twice. It definitely had that Frostpunk feel of, like, remember, you know, in Frostpunk 1, it's really tough, but it's pretty scripted. Like, once you realize where you failed, you go, okay, you know, what I needed to do was actually focus more on, like, coal initially, and then food, and blah, 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 right? And then you'd go play again, and you knew what to do, and then you'd hit the next part where something spun out of control, and you lose, and then you go again. And it was the same kind of thing, but actually has a little more RNG now, because of factions and politics and stuff, and I'll get to that in a second. So it was the same kind of grueling stuff. Like, I found myself, when I was redoing the tries on the second map, I was like, this time, literally just a matter of like one building hexagon, I was like, I need to chisel this ice out, because the way it works is you chisel ice, like you have initially, you can see kind of like the cracks on the sides here. You need to spend resources to break ice out in order to provide building area for yourself. So if you see, like, over here, you see in the distance in the top, if you see, like, oh, there's oil all the way at the top of the screen, you need to chisel a path to get to that oil. But maybe on the way there's some materials here, which is what they did. So they chiseled to the materials first, then went over. Every time you chisel, you can chisel 8 units at once. Building a basic building area is 6 units, and you can expand each building area as well. Up to, I think, 1 time, or maybe 2. Within each district, let me see if I can... Actually, you know what? I don't want to go too much into detail, because what's going to happen is we're going to watch this together, and then I will give you the details as we go along. So I'll give you, like, the general overview. So there is still building micro, but it's different kind of micro, right? It's not like, I need to just make sure this is within the heat radius, and I need to make sure that it has these workers. Now it's like, okay, I want to layer the residential areas as close together as possible. 3 touching each other, but then 3 also touching the furnace. And they're not allowed to neighbor an industrial area, because there's anti-synergy, and they're going to lose this. But I want to put the industrial and the food area together, because they synergize and they share workers. And remember, I said workers, like, population is kind of like a resource. And then all of a sudden, instead of taking 600 workers and 600 workers, they share like 150 workers. So now I need 150 less. So now I can move these precious 150 workers wherever, right? I can have them for something else now. And you need workers to chisel ice. You need workers to build districts. You need workers to get coal. You need workers to blah, 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 blah. What I can say is, again, it was really tightly tuned. And this was like just the beginning, right? This was like chapter 2. They did say that the game is like way longer than the first. I forgot what metric they gave, like 2.5, 3 times longer than the first, like without the DLCs. Like, it's pretty long, apparently, story mode, which is exciting. And then they have the Utopia sandbox builder and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to do, and it was tough, man. Like, it was like you're praying for like workers to join your town and stuff like that. If like 100 people died from the cold, you're like, I'm screwed, because I literally just, you know, all of a sudden you're like, well, now I can't house this industrial district, and I don't have enough workers to chisel the ice. So now I have to turn this district off. So this is where you can still kind of macro population, but not individually. You go, well, I got to turn this district off so that these 300 workers now join the remaining 400 workers, and now I have over 600 workers, which is great, because now I can chisel some ice. Done chiseling the ice, put the workers back in, blah, 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 blah. Right? What's up, Cora? So there's still some micro there. It's just a different kind of micro. All right? You mentioned Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Is more a continuous story, similar to FP1 with one scenario, you're done with the storyline. From what I saw, it was similar in the, like, it was a continuation. So I'll mention it when we see it. You basically do, the first one was, it actually had like a nice little Easter egg about Frostpunk 1. You need to find oil, and they mentioned like New London and stuff, if you guys remember from the first game. You need to find oil, and then once you find that oil, it expands into, like, it is a continuous story rather than like scenario 1, you're here. Scenario 2, you're here. Scenario 2 is not exactly in the same spot, but it continues the story from scenario 1 and develops it further. Now, how how it's going to develop beyond that, and whether it will be like a nice continuous flow of the story, or it'll just be like scenario 1, this part of the map, scenario 2, this part of the map. I don't know, because we just didn't get that far. I don't think that's the case. I think it'll be definitely a continuous flow kind of thing. At least that's what they were hinting to, and that's what they talked about with the story. Story was like super important for them, so yeah. Well, so I think I addressed the two kind of like major things. There were some minor complaints / requests for the UI stuff. Some of the UI changed, I think, a little. I didn't remember exactly what the UI was like in beta when I played. I will say this about the UI. So apparently they got a lot of requests for a dark mode UI, because obviously everything's white and bright everywhere, and they did it on purpose thematically because snowstorms and all that. They did get requests for dark mode UI. They said they're considering it, looking into it, might add it as an accessibility thing, blah blah blah. So maybe. The other thing about the UI that I will say, and I noticed the same thing in beta, and I had the same reaction in beta. So from my personal experience, I will say the following. If you've played a lot of Frostpunk 1, if you've never played Frostpunk before, the UI works, it's fine, it's actually fairly clean, but you first look at it and you're like, what's going on? If you've especially played Frostpunk 1, it's obviously pretty different looking in most areas than Frostpunk 1. But I think the gripe with the UI is it's not intuitive in some areas, but once you actually learn how to play the game and what you're doing, the UI works very well. There's some weird design choices and stuff that I personally didn't like this curved area. I know it's like small stuff, but like this curved area with the temperature gauge here, just like in the old one, temperature increase coming, temperature decrease coming. It just like makes it hard to read exactly when it passes over. I found it weird. Some elements could probably be repositioned elsewhere, can have a little more info somewhere, etc., etc. I did actually ask them about info and numbers, and they said they left it like purposely vague in some areas. They don't want you to know that you currently have a +10 standing with this faction, and +8 of it is, you know, because of money and blah blah blah. Like, they purposely left numbers out of a lot of stuff so that you didn't like mathematically micro everything, but rather reacted to situations differently based on their level of approval, disapproval, etc. Cool, fine. But yeah, one of the things they're looking at for UI that I was like, one of the biggest things with your UI is the UI works once you understand how to play the game. Everything makes sense, it's cool, it's clear, it's no problem. But up to that point, it's really overwhelming and hard to like know where to look. So what I suggested, that, I don't know, I wasn't the only one to do so. I don't know how they're going to treat it, what they're going to do, but perhaps they're going to work on their onboarding process a little bit. To better teach you the UI as you play. There is definitely a pretty heavy tutorial area, like here, if you guys remember, it like opens up in a big screen and it shows you with screenshots what's what. But it could still always be a little better. Right? So I think that's like the main stuff, especially in comparison to Frostpunk 1, that I kind of wanted to say. I'm sure I forgot something smaller, and as we go through the video, I'll go, oh, that's right, I wanted to mention this as well. But for the most part, those are like the major points / complaints / worries / whatever about the game that I made sure to ask, that they mentioned to people, that whatever. So before we dive into the vid, any cues before we go? Hopefully I'm being verbose enough to have answered a ton of them already. But again, just to hammer it home, they are totally fine with... They're totally fine, and their intent is that this is not Frostpunk 1 Part 2. This is Frostpunk 2. And as a standalone game, it's great. But inevitably, like I said, if there's somebody that is just an absolute super-duper diehard fan of Frostpunk 1, and what you cared about most was the micromanagement of individual citizens and stuff, you might not like this one as much. I'm just being dead honest, right? Like, not everything is for everyone. Yeah, I can touch on that now a bit. Okay. The faith and law system. Okay. I'll go into more detail once again as we start watching the video. So, I guess part of it was like, well, guys, you know, they moved to a more macro. They moved to, okay, sloot, that's great. So, where did they focus on? What's the new stuff? Okay. So, they went much, much heavier into the management of society and politics and people. I don't mean people like moving it from the coal mine to the sawmill or something. I mean like the general populace of your city, okay? So there is now, again, you will see, I don't want to go too much in detail because I'd rather say it as we're looking at it. There is now, you will have laws that you pass, which I had in the previous one too, but the amount of laws, their impact, the way they're passed, the amount of things you can research, etc., are way more than before. Like way more, way in depth, affect way more things. There are generally always two opposing factions that start in a map so far. There might be more later in the campaign. We'll see. I don't know. There's generally two opposing factions that start, and you always are, from the get-go, doing this kind of dance and balance of making sure one doesn't hate you too much while the other one likes you. And it all ties in, again, I'll show you. It all ties into, like, you know, what laws you pass, and even specifically what type of things you research. So you're not just researching a coal mine, you're researching, you know, a type of coal mine, right? One faction prefers the fucking hippie coal mine, and one faction prefers the tech coal mine. Which one are you going to research? Are you going to research the one that the hippies like because it's like, I don't know, more environmentally friendly or some shit? Or are you going to research the one that the tech guys like, which is more efficient but maybe produces more squalor or pollution, whatever? So all of this constantly ties together. Yeah, thank you for gifting me, said brother. I love you. All of this ties together and is further complicated and compounded by branching factions. So if you could see at the bottom of the screen, I'll play it for a bit just so this bar goes away. New factions arise as you play as branch-offs from current factions. So you see there's stalwarts, there's new Londoners, and the ones on the right side of the screen usually are one faction that's branched off of a similar faction, but they perhaps have more like extreme views on things or want slightly different things or whatever. So all of a sudden, and usually it starts a minority, right? Like let's say one faction is 52% of your population. Oh, hey, these 52 branched off into a more extremist group or a different kind of group, but similar still. 5% of the population. Each one has management options, like if one's unhappy, you can literally directly give them money. You can request money as well from them, and that's important, I'll mention later. You can, you know, sign agreements with them to make them happy. Sometimes those agreements are like, hey, you know, you can vote on what the next law is. So that way you don't have a choice what the next law is anymore. They do. But it'll make them happy, you know. So it was hard enough taking care of two factions. Now you're taking care of three or like 2.5 because the branch off faction likes most of what the original faction liked, but then it likes its own stuff too. And anytime you're displeasing factions too much, just like in the original, your trust falls and everything goes to shit, and you have to raise your trust or you get kicked out and you get exiled, which of course never happened to me, surely. And all of the elemental things and resource management things from the previous game still play into this. Are the homes cold? People are going to get pissed off. Who are we heating homes for? Etc., etc., right? We don't have enough food. People are starving. Trust drops. People are unhappy. The factions start hating you, blah, blah, blah. If one faction really dislikes you, they can start rioting in certain sectors and shut them down completely. Well, the coal mill's not, the coal plant's not working because people are rioting here. On the flip side, if you get people to really like you, they can run like parades and praise and stuff in one section, in one sector. So, so the system, and again, it'll be easier for you guys to envision this and understand this as we go through the video. But there's like a lot of the focus has not shifted entirely because, like I said, there's still resource management, resource like city building, synergy, etc., but a lot of the new development, let's say, is heavily focused on society and politics, etc., a lot of it. So and it's a very tough, what was, like I said, I played hard mode, and what was the hardest was not even, it was not just managing the resources and being like, uh-oh, it's really cold and I can't heat all the homes. It was the impact that that had on the factions and then still maintaining enough, like, neutrality or, God forbid, happiness, but neutrality or satisfaction amongst the factions while all this extreme pressure of lack of resources and stuff, so that they don't boo me and kill me and hate me and whatever. All right. Cool. Yeah, I'll mention that in big years. So let's start going a bit through the video here. Any other questions, or did that answer your question hopefully a bit, at least initially, Corey? We'll start going through the video a bit. I'll do the same thing. I'll kind of like pause, talk a bit, especially as we start diving in a little more detail about the major things that I mentioned. Oh, I actually will mention one more thing. Oh, perfect. There is still outpost building, if you guys remember. And in fact, I would say there's even a heavier focus on outposts and exploration out in the world. So, in the first one, if you guys remember, you would basically you'd make a scout team. It would take like 5 population. You'd make a second one, take another 5, and you just send scout teams out, right? And you come across a scripted event that you encounter, and it's like, hey, we found some wood and some oil. Cool, take it. Okay, next. So similar stuff exists in this one. The way that the expedition team works is a little different. You can not constantly within cap, but you can convert more and more population to this symbol here, which is basically your like recon team quantity. And there's a lot of places that they've done a little more emphasis, at least initially, that we've seen both in the beta, but also here as well in the story preview, where, for instance, the story implication here was in the second map, there's already a pre-built city here. They're struggling for survival. There's a bit of coal here. There's a bit of resource, but you'd better go further out and find stuff, because you're not going to last a long time with the coal here. So you need to go out, set up your recon teams while dealing with everything back at home, right? Everyone hating each other and cold winter and all that kind of stuff. And you need to explore the map. You will still have events like, oh, look, some people. Oh, look, some materials, et cetera, et cetera. But eventually you're going to come across like, oh, wow, there's an unused old coal plant here. We can use this. Before, what would you do? You'd click a button, it would set up a camp, and that's it, right? And you just set it and forget it. After X days or weeks, it would finish, and then you'd send the scout team to the next spot. Here now you use some of this resource, and you literally have to build, and like you see this thick railroad looking thing, you literally build and trail railroads or pathing from that area back to one of your point of entries into your town. Like, you need to establish a route, and then you can use the route and some of your resource to ferry stuff back and forth in terms of resource. So it's not like crazily more in depth, but it's definitely developed a little beyond the first game. That was just obviously another kind of major like system that we needed to talk about real quick. Other than that, let's have a peek. So this is the beginning of the very first intro mission of the story. I think from what I've seen, they're going to show us both of them, which is what most people got. All right, let me know on volume, by the way. I think I turned it down enough, but just in case. We'll kind of go through this video together. Obviously, the game is very pretty. So, story and systems aside, aesthetics are great. Aesthetics are great. The environment's great. The immersion's great. One complaint I will have, it got a little annoying sometimes. Kind of the same voice lines would play over and over sometimes, depending on the situation. Which at the beginning added immersion, but later on we're like, okay, you've said that an automaton is stopping traffic 15 times now, you know what I mean? Either play them a little less or get some more of them, kind of thing, I think there's an option to turn that kind of stuff on or off. So, to start off, I'll kind of like tutorial with you guys for whoever didn't play beta, didn't watch me play beta, didn't play it yourself, hasn't seen anything about the game, blah, blah, blah. So, when you first start a map, very similar, well, kind of similar to Frostpunk 1, you see all your resource nodes around. You can pan around the environment to your heart's content. Gives it a little intro, fight the cold, just like the original stuff. So you can start looking around. You can hold Alt, it'll show resource nodes, or you can go into ice. This is the frost breaking mode. And you can see the area that you can build in and where nodes are and where you want to get to. So for instance, all of this area has already been chiseled through. I have a 3090 for reference, my video card. All this area has already been chiseled through, okay? This yellow are the hexagons that you can select to break ice through in order to reach other nodes. So the premise of this map is there's a crashed, what were the trains in the first one called, chat? Dreadnoughts, whatever. So there's kind of a little homage to the first game. So there you find out some info about New London, and there's a crashed dreadnought here. I think they were called dreadnoughts. And there's oil tankers that have spilled, and you need to access these oil tankers for oil while obviously getting food and blah, blah, blah. And just like the first one, you have, you know, goals and timelines you have to meet and whatever. Otherwise you fail and people kick you out. So the first thing you do is you look around the map. Well, what do I need? We need oil. So we're going to break through the ice. You could break 8 segments of ice in 1 round of frost breaking, which costs material and people. Well, people temporarily. So this player's looking around. This is not my footage. They gave us B-roll footage. Nobody was allowed to record a reminder. So we're all seeing kind of the same footage. So they're going to break through here. They're saying, okay, I need to get over to the oil, but I also need to, reminder, having area around the equivalent of the furnace here, which is the broken dreadnought. You want to be able to build residential around the area in order to synergize and blah, blah, blah. So that's why they, to you, they're like, why the hell did they break that ice instead of going directly to the oil? Well, that's why. And each district needs to build, I think in this intro mission, it was a minimum of 3 units. So you can't build like an industrial sector with only 1 unit. You need to have at least 3. It doesn't matter how far they go. You can connect them in a big line if you want from the source, but at least 1 unit has to be on top of the node for resource collection. It does say dreadnought. Oh, it is a dreadnought. Okay. I couldn't remember the exact term for it from the first game. Cool. So just like the first one, you can speed up time. All the ice is breaking here. It takes temp population to break the ice. So these are your scraps. Let me go back 1 second. So in the first game, if I remember correctly, there was no currency, right? In this game, there is currency. Like there is like essentially the equivalent of gold. I forget in the OG game, like you used to like you needed metal and all that kind of stuff to build, right? And wood. In this one, you don't. I'll pause it in a second. Windows Media Player can only go back in chunks. It's really annoying. There you go. Okay, so in this one you have scraps. Scraps is your money in this. Scraps you get, well, you can see a bit there from individual contributions on a per weekly basis. And as you can imagine, there is just, I didn't even probably see a fraction of them, but just a plethora of things that will affect this. Population size, population happiness, a ton of different laws that could increase or decrease this. The amount of goods and materials that you process. We'll talk about that more, I think, in the second map, because in this kind of intro map, goods don't exist. You can see it up here. There's more resource nodes. There's more resource types than this, so that's not. We'll talk about that later. But either way, you get a certain amount of money. That money is, as I think they hovered in a moment, that money is used to build your districts. So if you hover over a district, you can see what it takes to build, to maintain, what the demand is for it, and what the output is for each district. So in the case of an extraction district, which is what you build on like coal deposits, these oil tankers, etc., it will take, during its construction, 200 people of your workforce. If you look at the top of the screen, your current population is 1950. It will cost you 50 scraps or gold or whatever currency, just to kind of get the point across. Once it's built, it will require 200 people to work there. So imagine that similarly kind of to the first game where it's like you can put 5 workers in the hothouse and that's it. Now, again, you cannot micro this population. It's just 200. And while it's active, it will require a constant demand of 20 materials, which is one of the types of resource which you get via going to like a materials node and building a district there. But what it will output is 50 oil and 150 materials. Okay? Now, usually it's a goods material ratio. We'll get back into that later. So each district has this kind of stuff. They're probably going to mouse through different ones here. Oh, maybe not. So there you go. So he built his first district. They built their first district. It only requires 3 squares because this is an intro map. Usually it's 6 hexagons, not squares. So now they're going to have oil coming in. And immediately there's, you know, like a little pop-up to get you in the mood. You needed oil initially to get the furnace started in the first place. Don't do what I did, which is start farming oil, and then 100 people die from cold, and you're like, how's that possible? I have oil. And you're like, I forgot to turn the dreadnought. I forgot to turn the, well, dreadnought in this case, but the generator on, the furnace on. So just like before, different UI, obviously. You turn the generator on. It tells you very well there what the requirement for oil is for heat here. And so it produces materials for its own upkeep. In this like intro one, it's a little weird. It does. But usually that's not the case. Well, that's why I said we'll talk about that more in the second map. So now they've built the first housing district. Let's go back just 1 second, just so you guys can see that synergy thing I was talking about. So now he's going to do a housing district. And as you can see, when he hovers over close on the neighboring tiles next to the dreadnought, it says -5 heat for generator warmth. So that says that if you build 1, 2, 3 of the building hexagons near the generator, it will give you a -5 heat requirement bonus for that housing district, which means less oil requirement, right? Which means you can start to flex resources elsewhere. And it doesn't end there. Hopefully they do it. But if they build a second housing district, they can benefit both from the first housing district. They're doing it right now. So you can see housing warmth. That's for the other housing district. That's good. And then another 3 laid next to the furnace. So they get a -5 heat bonus from the furnace and a -5 heat bonus from the first housing district. Now, I did notice that the first housing district didn't retroactively get a -5 as well for building the second housing district next to it. I don't know if... I kind of forgot to ask them. I don't know if that's a bug or that's a bad display or something, but it should make sense, of course, that the first housing district will also get another -5 heat from the second housing district, right? But whenever I hovered over it, it didn't say it, so yeah. Hopefully it's just a bug or something. Or just like a display issue. 30 people froze to death. So this is just an alert that like, hey, there's a high food supply area here, which we're going to need. It's got seals, so maybe you want to dig over to this. So we've fast forwarded here a bit, obviously. This area has now been dug out. As you can see, they've already built some stuff. At the beginning of this map, none of this is dug out. It's just, you know, they're going to fast forward through things to paint the picture. So they've kind of dug all the way down through here. They're going to take advantage of this oil and this food. I think these were 2 food areas as well. And then there's materials in the distance here that they're going to build towards. Bugs in game. How do we get a robot? Robot for 2 seconds. Robot Tussin. Also for reference, I have no idea what difficulty they're playing on in this video, but probably at least normal. So this was meant to be a bit of an homage to the first game. Remember the New London and New London Scouts and stuff? So this was just like a little Easter egg flavor thing for the beginning. Also done eating my lunch, so I can put this away whilst talking to you guys. So just like the first game, obviously initially you start getting problems, people start getting cold and promise us you're going to give us shelter, and you know, so all of that stuff still exists. You have to build storage for food stuff, and here's where I'm going to mention one of the more detailed building things in a moment. So, actually that was a nice little UI snippet. that they're doing here. You know, let me have my trigger finger on the space bar for this stuff to better explain it. Although, to be fair, a lot of it's self-explanatory. But hovering over resources is where you get a more detailed view of things, right? It tells you your demand, it tells you your supply, it tells you how quickly you're stockpiling food or whatever resource. It tells you what the cap on your surplus is. And of course, if it was, you know, aggressively being used, consumed, it would tell you what, you know, what your stockpile is and how much stockpile you're going through a day. Right now it says stockpiling up arrow, 203 a day. Great. Obviously that could be going the other direction, and often will be. You could be losing stockpile at 200 a day, so you can kind of plan, you know, and be like, oh, well, that's not good. That means per week I'm losing X. That means we have, 20 weeks until we starve, kind of thing. That to make a sense. Again, if there's anyone who has questions, stop me anytime. So this is where I get a little more in detail with the building. So each district is able to house at least one extra building. Sometimes the buildings can be built within different districts. Sometimes they have to be built in a district type building. So, for instance, the stockpile capacity for food that they're hovering over in the bottom right of the menu doesn't have to be built in a food district. You can see the little white circles here for housing. You can build it in a housing district. You can also expand districts for some more material from like 6 to 9 hexagons, let's say, and it will also, usually tells you, that will give you an extra building slot. So this is important later when you need to build things like storage and sawmills and all that kind of stuff, because you don't directly build a sawmill anymore on top of a pile of wood. What you do is you build the industrial or the extraction district there, and then you choose the building you want. Let's say it's a sawmill, and you put it in that slot. So you kind of like slot your districts. So here they're going to build a food pile because they're one of the goals is you have to stockpile 40,000 food to get past this mission. They only have 10,000. Each stockpile gives 15,000, so they have to build 2 stockpiles and then amass at least 40,000 food before 33 weeks, right? So this is a view of the housing, like a housing district UI. All the UIs are kind of similar for the districts to keep it consistent. But it shows you it houses 100 people. The requirement I think for upkeep was 100. I'm trying to remember everything. The total output was 15 houses. The total heat demand is 52. And notice how it's kind of like a weird number, and that's because it's decreased a bit from the surrounding heat environments. And then this is the building slot, which is what they're trying to show. You can destroy buildings later. Like if you build a sawmill and all of the resource of the sawmill gets drawn out, you don't have to just have the sawmill there. You can destroy it and get some resource back. So they're building both of those. Now they can cap up to 40k food. I think I just skipped ahead a bit. These exclamation marks here with the little time bar around them are an indication that the resource is running low in that node. And if you hover over it, it'll usually give you a little more information, like there is, at least at this rate, there is 30 weeks left of this resource, whatever. And once the full white bar runs out, the resource is deadzo. And same with here, like you clicked on oil, it says that this deposit has 24,000 oil remaining. It'll last you 56 weeks at this current consumption. Obviously, if you build more housing or more things that require heat, those 56 weeks are going to go down. Conditions. So this is what the whiteout looks like. They succeeded the mission at the last second. But anyway, that's what the, like, was it called the whiteout in the first game? You know, when you had like the extreme temp drop and like everything went crazy and you had to crank the furnace, which you don't have as much micro control over the furnace anymore as you did before, but you do have an option to crank the furnace. I think it's at like double fuel consumption, things like that. That was the first map, which is obviously the more minor part of the video. What we'll spend more time is the second map, which I assume they're about to go to in a second, because that's where building opens up a lot, and you can see a little more details of everything. Like, you don't even get to make laws and stuff in this first map. It really is just a very intro experience of, like, here's a node. This is how you build on a node. This is how you synergize buildings, etc., etc. So if I were asked earlier for how the stories link together and stuff, this is a good example. Once you defeat that first mission. Don't kill each other, but... Cool little intro thing. Got my trigger finger on the space bar, good. Ready to pause. Just a chance down right here, dude. That's the name of the game. The game itself is going to be great. I think the people that won't like it will be, understandably, the people that just really prefer the systems to the first one more. I think they'll have varying mixed feelings towards this. Or people, obviously, that just don't enjoy this kind of game. Right? Like, and that goes for literally every video game. But the quality of this game and the difficulty and stuff is, like, it's what you expect based on the first Frostpunk. So far, from what I've seen. I hope it doesn't, like, randomly drop off after, like, a few missions, but... More exciting to be like Frostpunk 1? Yeah, I think a lot of people were, but the reality is it's a little more macro. So, as I said, the beginning of this map is basically, here's a little bit of coal, but you need to find more, aka build outposts. Low on resources, you already have, like, an overcrowded city, etc., etc. So you're already set up for disaster in this area. Relative disaster. Let's get to work. Let's get down to business. Okay, so now you can see the breadth of the UI a little more in detail. Okay, so like more of the resources are there. So you have a bunch more starting money over here because you're joining a city that's, like, you know, already kind of fucked and you need to save it. You do still have cores, if you guys remember machine cores from the first game. Here's your current population. Here's the heat requirement and output, housing requirement and output, the little meters if they're red. So like so for housing, for instance, the white area of the housing that means that's how much housing you have. The red is what you're missing and people still need housing for. So for instance, in terms of the heat here, you have 0 heat because the generator is not on because you haven't chiseled to the coal yet. So you're in complete deficit. Food is good, right? Food is a big yellow bar. You're well matching the demand and performing over. This is materials. So this is like, you'll see in a bit, it's like wood piles and stuff like that. And then these are goods. And from what I remember, goods did not exist in the first game. And goods are very important because they have a direct impact on, first of all, a lot of things that are required for some buildings, but they have a direct impact on the amount of money you get per week. So if you have a goods deficit, you're going to get a penalty to the amount of money you're getting per week because of, because there's not enough goods, you know? The player is blocking some of the UI stuff. No, I can't, unless I can't really change. Is there a way, does anybody know in Windows Media Player to, like, make this bar more opaque or anything like that? If there is, let me know. But I usually don't use this, so obviously I look at it on, like, YouTube and stuff. But once I start playing, it'll go away at least. It's just when I pause. Wait, I didn't go through all the things. This one is coal. Self-explanatory. This one is your, like, scouting parties that I mentioned earlier, going to the overworld. And then this one is basically, like, enforcers of your city. So if there's, you know, issues with keeping the peace and blah, 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 stuff like that, you get some... strong arm. It is full screen. Yeah, it's full screen right now. So, yeah. Oh, you mean this full screen? Mini player. Oh, that full screen. Oh, we don't have the top part anymore. Okay, that's good. That's good. Nice. So, first thing they do is they're going to start cracking ice. They've identified that the coal is over there, the minimal coal that they have. They obviously need to immediately get that. So these are all the resource nodes on the map here. So you can see the little like hammer and ruler line one. Those are materials. The little haunch of meat, food, obviously. Coal is that hexagonal symbol in the bottom right. And then you have this, these like circle recycling cube thing. That is just like the first game. You have to go to specific areas of your base in order to build your outposts that send, you know, scout teams out into the Frostlands. Important to note as well, you can't see another one on the map here, but there are like 2 or 3 usually, from what in my experience, per map. So there's one here. I think there's one down in the south and just a bit lower on the map. It's important to note that where you build them is actually important. Unlike the first game, you just get to one and then it's good to go. In this game, if you construct the one in the north, then point of entry into your city when you're building railroads and paths from camps that you set up is in the north of your city. So for instance, on this first map, I didn't know, obviously, I built it in the south, but I found a coal deposit in the north past the city. So then I had to build a railroad all the way around the city to the south, which cost me substantially more resources. So in the future, I know to min-max that now, right? I know that you'll probably find something in the north, not in the south. So they're breaking out some ice. They're making some housing. They're kind of failing with the housing here. Sorry to criticize. I'll explain why in a second. I'm just seeing what they're doing exactly before I fully unload. They're trying to show you right now that if you build one housing district next to the other, that's why they're shaking their mouse, is you get a heat bonus, -5 heat, as long as 3 units are touching each other. 3 of the 6 units. Now, there was a new feature. Oh, yeah, keep going. You can do it. Yep. There it is. Okay, perfect. There's an even more feature. I didn't see this in the beta. This was only apparent here in the story mode. So based on certain maps, you can actually environmentally benefit your housing as well. So if you build your housing in these kind of valleys here, then they get protected from the wind. So if you have at least 3 of the housing in the valley, they get another -5 heat bonus. So they're trying to build 3 on the top to benefit from the first housing area, and then also 3 on the bottom in the gorge area in order to get a benefit from sheltering from the wind. So although the building is different, there's still a fair bit of consideration with like how you build and where you build, etc., etc. And as a result, where you chisel the ice. There you go. So they'll need to break ice as well, going to the coal, which they are in the bottom right. And you can see there's those like little question marks, that like things that pop up in the question mark here. This is kind of your like glossary / tutorial thing that pops up whenever you experience something new. You can click on that button. It'll put up, maybe they'll show it later, but it'll put up like a nice big screen with details on the topic. So he's building an extraction site. Notice how this time the extraction site is 6 units instead of 3. 3 was just for the purposes of that first little intro mission. It's usually 6 in all the experience that I've seen. So he built his first district. As long as it's linked together and at least one of the units is on top of the node, we're good to go. So he's built some housing. Tension is high. People are afraid because they're going to fucking die from the cold. And they will die. Hopefully. I think they're waiting for us to read. Okay. So you can see they built 2 housing districts, and now the housing meter at the top has a much smaller red segment. Still not fully, though, right? But it's a much smaller red segment. So as long as that red segment exists, there's still a portion of the factions at the bottom. There's currently 3 factions you can see. There's still a portion of them that are homeless. As a result, probably increased cold. Chances of them dying, blah, 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 which increases whichever factions they're part of, or all the factions, increases their like hatred towards you, decreases trust, that starts to spiral into other issues, and so on and so on. Now you can see food is starting to get spent as well. At the top it says spending, and the yellow bar is decreasing because you're chewing through your surplus. Now this is one of the factions, and you can see from this UI, each one of the factions have like different... I don't really know what the word is for this exactly. Perks? Affixes? I don't know. Things they like. These three symbols here. They all have like a topic, or I don't know how to word this. They all have like a, I don't know, something that they focus on or benefit or represent or whatever, like a certain trait. Trait is a good one. Niche trait, yeah, something like that. And some of these traits, if you build up enough of by researching the correct buildings, etc., in the bottom left, and you fill those meters, that's when they start to like praise you and blah blah blah. Either way, this is one of the faction menus that you can see with some of the options you can do, and you can do this for each one, to either ask them for things. So this symbol here is like hands shaking. So, you know, you can cut deals with them. You can ask them for money. If they hate you, you can give them money, blah, blah, blah. But this is your kind of management here. So they're going through them. So you can literally even bully them into money. So you can have your guards, aka these 10 dudes, go bully them for heat stamps. You'll get a ton of money, right? And it requires 9 guard squads. We have 10, so that's okay. But there's always, of course, because it's Frostpunk, it's 11-bit. There's always going to be some kind of issue with that. So if you do that, you get the money, but relations are gonna worsen with them, and relations, your level of relations are these bars. This like white bar here, like this. This one's gold because it's to a high level, so they're like friendly with you. They really like you. And obviously, if it goes lower, it starts to get red, and that's bad. So you can help control that bar by cutting deals. You can decrease it by, for instance, this, forcing money out of them. Trust goes down, etc. Or you can give them money to increase it. You can let them vote on the next law, or you can let them choose which law is next to vote on. You can agree that you will research a certain type of building that their faction likes, but then the other faction doesn't like it, and they're going to lose trust with the other faction, and so on and so on. So here we go. Here's the nice stuff. Fund projects, promote. You can basically have it so that, remember how I said there's kind of 2 major factions at the beginning? So these 2 factions on the right here, the ones that they like here, are a branch off of the bigger faction on the very right. And what you can do is you can even have them, you can promote this faction, and what will happen is people from other factions, from the total of your population, will then join this faction. This faction will like that. Others maybe not so much, that you're promoting them and not others, right? Raise funds, demand funds, etc., etc. So you guys kind of get where this is going. You can't please everyone at once, and you will not be able to. So they thought it was a good idea to muscle shit out of them, because why not? Or to demand funds. So they chiseled some materials and some food area stuff. So they're building food. There you go. Food also shares neighboring heat with residential area. That's great. They're going to build an extraction district for all this material land. Industrial / extraction does not synergize with residential and food, and if you put them in a neighboring area, there's a detriment rather than plus heat, rather than a heat bonus like decreased requirement. It could be an increased heat bonus requirement, you know, that kind of thing. So you'd have to pay attention to what you've chiseled out and where you build, and you cannot build less than 6 units minimum for each district. You can't be like, oh, I'll just build like only 3 then, because I don't have space for 6, because if I build 6, it'll hit the neighboring like housing district. No, you have to build 6. You have to pre-plan your area. Oh, if I want to show that. Goddamn. So right here, you can see he hovered over heat demand, which has a little asterisk, and that asterisk says that it's modified by -5 from the wind by building down in the valley, and -5 from housing neighboring warmth. So usually it costs 40 heat for this housing area, but now it's 30 because of the bonuses, which means less coal consumption, and you're already starving for coal, so it'll buy you more time because you won't go through that coal as quickly, and then you can, you know, spend more time exploring the Frostlands and finding your coal deposit.
Technicians are on their way.
Now what they're doing here is they're expanding. Remember I said each district can be expanded. So they're expanding this particular housing district by clicking that arrow out square button. It costs just a bit of money, and you can build 3 extra units.
Are on their way.
Right? And he still wants to get benefits, if he can, but you have to build it neighboring your current one. By doing so, he's also provided an extra building slot. Remember, like the food depot, food storage increase, things like that. So he's building an entirely new housing district here, deciding where to neighbor it as best as possible to benefit heat, and keeping in mind that
Taste my
exactly,
ass.
and it tastes delicious. Niska, thanks for the 14. Appreciate that. Keep in mind, yeah, again, you have to think about this stuff. If you take, I don't know, paint.net. If you take a, let's say this is your generator, okay? And you build a housing district like this, 6 units. And then you build a housing district like this. And then you build another housing district like this, right? So you got 1, 2, 3. What's the issue here, right? You'd have to use VLC. Yeah, I don't have VLC on this computer. I just like literally never watch like saved VODs like this. July 22nd or 27th if you don't pre-order the digital Uther. So what's the issue with this picture? The issue is that if you want to now expand housing district number 2, you can't because you fucked up. There's no space to expand it because you enclosed it in number 1 and 3. So that's why I don't know if you noticed in the video we were watching just now, if we go back just a second, right? So that's stuff that like you still have to consider for micro building. You see there? Oop. You see there, he did not fill these squares in, these hexagons in, because if he did so, it would screw the housing district from before that he has not expanded yet. So they went, no, can't build there. I need to save at least 3 spots around them for this. You'll learn this when you're older, Chad, okay? So, 3rd housing district's done. Almost. There it is. He has, like, probably just a smidge left of homeless people. I don't know, maybe like 120 or something. All right, so now he's building a research institute. If you guys remember research institutes, they were, I forgot exactly what they were called in the first game, like the tech institutes where you sent the engineers and you could build 4 of them to benefit like research speed. Similar concept here, but you don't neighbor them or anything. They are a building that goes into a slot in housing. So they're building that, and by doing so, they have now opened up their research tree, which you'll see in a second, which is like fucking 10 times bigger than it used to be. Okay, maybe not 10, but like it's a fair bit bigger. The idea tree, aka research. It doesn't look that big right now, but what happens is, as you first of all, it has multiple sections. You can see at the bottom, heating, resource, economy, society. And as you discover and do more, kind of just like the old tree, it starts to branch out. This one too, there's like a graphic where the ice cracks and more stuff opens up, which hopefully we'll see a little later on. Now, what I was saying earlier, is that you don't just research. What is this? You don't just research a coal mine, okay? You research a type of coal mine, and different factions like different types of coal mines. As you can see, they have different symbols here. So what are these guys? These guys are the, I forgot their name exactly, whatever, the technician dudes. They prefer grinding coal mines. And each coal mine is different with different stats. So some coal mines will take less workers and output more coal, but you get increased squalor. Squalor is a mechanic of like dirtiness, grime, pollution, things like that. And it'll take a higher material demand or maybe a lower material demand. You know, maybe it'll take more workers, but less squalor, less material demand, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a few factors you have to consider in which type you research. Research costs some money, as you can see here as well. And this is where materials, well, one of the many reasons materials come into play. So You research this coal mine, great. You build this coal mine. Each coal mine is going to take 60 materials to sustain. So that means you have to have an extraction district on top of materials giving at least 60. You want to make goods, that's going to be more. You want to make whatever other building, that's going to be more. So materials is obviously super important as well. When you expand the districts, you only have 3 slots for each synergy, right? Not like an expanded one can have 4 or more synergy points with the heat reduction. I only managed to ever synergize like 2 things at once, like close to 3. No, sorry, 3. I managed to synergize furnace, food, and another housing district. Sorry, food, housing district, and furnace. Yeah. If you lay it, but that like on average, I think 2 is the best you can aim for because you start to screw other districts. So you just build a food district there. Didn't want to build it too close to the industrial because of bad synergy. And this is when things, just like in the first game, shit constantly happens. Food stockpiles are running low. This guy ate my lunch. I'm cold. My children don't have fingers. Blah, blah, blah. That's capped forever. Even after you expand. It's just minimum 3. Once you hit the 3, you're good. Hey, Terry. If that answers your question. Music banger. We met the dude that was... we met the composer for the soundtrack for the game and for the first game, and he's done a bunch of other games, including Witcher. We talked about it when I talked with you guys about my trip to Warsaw. So, important building that was just built in the heart of the city is your laws building. I forgot exactly what it was called. But just like you will not open up your research tree without the research building, you will not be able to start voting on and passing laws without your law building. I'll show you in a second. So the very first council. Okay, so here I'm going to spend a little more time explaining now that you guys are going to see how this works if you didn't see the beta, etc. For each law that passes, okay, there are 100 delegates that vote on your laws, okay, making up the different factions that are present. In this case, currently 3 factions. You can have more than 3. And the amount of seats they have in their house is relative to the amount of, percentage of their population, etc. In order to pass a vote, you need 51 votes approved minimum. As you can imagine, opposing factions, if one faction likes what you're about to vote on, chances are the opposing faction is not going to like what you vote on. The minor faction that branched off of the one of the major factions might support it, might kind of be neutral about it, might fully be okay with it. Who knows? So, how do you get people... Well, I'll show a bit more. How do you get people to vote for a law you want to pass if only 24 or 20 are 20 or 420 are against? What about the other 60 people? Well, there's some options, as you can see here. I'm going to actually hide my camera for a second is what I'm going to do. Just so you guys can see the full UI here. So it says, when you return to the council, an official will be able to propose new laws. So the very first law, once you build it, is like you vote on it right away. And it's if I remember correctly, it's just an approval thing that the people still approve for you to lead them. I don't think it's possible to get kicked out here. It might be. I don't know. I guess technically it is. But after this first vote of like, are you fit to lead us? You will be able to choose from laws and stuff. We'll go. You can see in the top left of the screen the 3 factions that you currently have. So the New Londoners, the Frostlanders, and the Stalwarts. Those are your 3 homies currently. So it says here, 20 delegates will approve your vote for you to stay. It'll say which of those delegates will approve. So the Stalwarts are the branch off. That's why they have less. 65 of them are undecided currently. They're hesitant. And 15 hate you. And those are the amount of representatives for each faction that hate you, the delegates. You can vote immediately, so you can hope that of the 65 people that are hesitant, at least 31 will end up siding with you. So a bit of a coin toss there, up to you. Or you can negotiate. There's a few things you can do to negotiate. Or you can pressure them. So you can literally aggressively force them to vote for you. But everyone will hate you more if you do that. And you can see that bar says you are tolerated. Yeah, if you do that, that bar decreases pretty heavily every time you aggressively, push them in a certain direction. So they're just showing the options here. So you notice if you turn that on, you will become despised if that's what you do. If that's what you want to do. You turn it back off, that bar increased a bit, and now you're in tolerated territory. So to guarantee your vote as much as you can negotiate. And this is the negotiating panel. So it does the overview of who likes you, who doesn't, whatever. And then you have options on the left side of how and who. Who to negotiate with, and then the how comes up on the right side. So he's looking around, he's seeing, okay, well, how many of the people that are hesitant, what faction are they from? Because if I negotiate with that faction, I'll get more of them into the for category, right? So they decide to negotiate with them. What the terms are is that I want you to vote for this law. There might be circumstances where you're trying to get people to vote against a law later. But for now, they want to vote for so you don't get kicked out. And then you say, okay, I want you to vote for. They go, okay, we'll vote for as long as you do one of these three things. Could be, I think sometimes there's even 4 options. Might be more later, but. So you either fund our projects, which means you're going to lose some money. You'll increase some relations. You pass this law. Sometimes I've seen both pass and at least vote on the law. I saw the vote on the law more in beta, but it seems like you can cheese it and still fail the law, but they're happy that you voted it. But when I did the gameplay test in Warsaw, you had to pass the law. It wasn't just like put the law up for vote. Or research a policy for machine adjusted shifts in the research tree. So you look around, you go, okay, which one of these is best? Which one's worse? It's a little simple now, right? But later on, some of these choices are going to start to clash with another faction, right? Because right now, for instance, you haven't discovered that policy, the machine shift, whatever. But in the future, the other faction can go, you know what? Actually, we want you to drop machine shift and we want you to implement our policy, which is great. It'll make them happy, but then it'll piss the other faction off. So he's looking around at somebody else now, right? He's looking at the different faction. Well, what do you guys want? What do we get if we pass these? What hurts us if we don't pass these? Blah, blah, blah. So they're making their decision. And the Stalwarts is the more minor faction that I think branched off of, I forget which one. But nonetheless, they're seeing what they can do to get these guys to vote as well. So eventually you make a decision. Okay, see, that's super shit, right? Having a decreased income, probably not ideal. But then again, you'd think that's the bottleneck, but then something else bottlenecks. Okay, well, they seem to disagree with me, so. Now, it'll say, before you click accept, it'll say the prediction of what happens if you negotiate with these people. So the 4 went up from 20 to 30. You still have 57 hesitant and 13 against. So you still need at least 21 more people of the remaining 57 that are hesitant to vote for you. And you can only negotiate, I think, with one group. Like, I'm almost positive. So you have to make your decision, well. So now he's going to vote, and hopefully they don't vote him out. Right? Chances are they won't. But we have a mic cam on, but mic off stream. What are you talking about? So now they're voting. Okay, so 54 people. You can see at the bottom of the screen voted for. 51 are required. We're good. Happy. We don't get kicked out. Nope. Just trying to put the cam back. Oh, actually, I can do it from here. Hello. I'm back. Wait, no, that's the wrong fucking... There we go. Okay, so that's good. I don't remember exactly what they negotiated, but whatever they negotiated, they will have to do. Oh, there we go. Promise to the Stalwarts, he has to research unproductive do maintenance. And if you hover over this white bar similar to the first game, it'll tell you how many weeks you have left to do it. Just like in the first game, you don't fulfill your promise, these guys will hate you. Before it was the population hates you and distrusts you. Now it's this faction is going to be pissed at you and will make your life much more difficult later. Now, I'm just backing up for a second to show you another part of the UI element at the top, which is like kind of the major conditions or statuses of the city. I don't know if they'll hover over all of them. So there's squalor, disease, just like before. So Squalor is pollution, blah, 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 things like that. It tells you what buildings increase it. At first I was like, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Everything in this game is very balanced in the sense that if you ignore a certain element of the game, whether it be cold, food, obviously, squalor, disease, it all starts to get pretty out of hand. So there's food, there's cold, the usual UI from before with surplus, supply, demand. So you can see, shit is already pretty rough. Everything is not being met for demand, which means some people aren't eating, some people are cold, some homes or business or districts aren't heated properly, etc., etc. So, welcome to Frostpunk. Lying is frowned upon. I mean, it says your workforce, who's sick, whatever. So he only has 300 people available. So the air transport hub is what's needed. That we fast forwarded a bit. Obviously, some of these are like already built right now. Let me back up just so you guys can see the air transport hub. I'll pause on it. So the air transport hub reduces workforce requirements in neighboring district. So this is kind of like, trying to remember the first game. There's a few examples, especially in the fall DLC for the first game. It's basically a building that any proximity district, as you can see on the tooltip, will reduce the amount of workers needed. Okay. So the reason that they hovered over their population at the top and then put our attention down here is that they want to, I'll go with it one more second so you guys can see. They want to build a logistics district. The logistics district is what's used for your recon scout teams that you put out into the Frostland, just like the first game. We could see what's needed here. The problem is it requires 600 people to build this district. So then they mouse up to their population to make us catch our attention that they only have 300. Well, more, but a bunch of them are sick. So this is why if people die or are sick or whatever, so they're like, uh-oh, I can't build the logistics. If I can't build logistics, I can't get scouts out. If I can't get scouts out, I can't find a new source of coal. My coal is running low. I'm going to die. We're all going to die. They're going to kick me out if I don't do something about this.
Taste my ass.
I will. Meg, thanks for
Didn't
19
realize
Primarina.
my sub ran out and I almost shit myself with the loudest ad I've ever heard.
Sorry. But thank you very much, man. Welcome back. Enjoy the ad-free experience. Welcome. Welcome. Cool. Yeah, but they deserved it probably, horny, because they were like you. Okay, so they're like, well, we need 600 to build. We only have 300. What are options? Options are closing some districts, which is not great because we're already so tight on materials. We need people getting materials and coal and stuff. Or let's try building this.
Taste my ass.
Let's try building this transport hub. And our own brother, thanks for the 14. There you are. I haven't seen you in months. Let's try building this hub. So what this does is, as I said earlier, it decreases the amount of workers needed. It says right there, reduces the workforce requirements in all neighboring districts. So, once again, another factor that was important for you to take into account for building appropriately. Notice how they left this little nook here between two districts and can also probably expand this one up if needed. Right, that'll help because with one building, then you affect two districts as opposed to one. So you can see, it has a bit of a range. So he built it neighboring 3 districts there.
I'm ready, sir. Ready, sir.
So all of a sudden,
I'm ready too, sir.
He's building another one here. All of a sudden, the amount of people that he had should shoot up to over 600.
Go to the corner!
Once they're done building. There's a little subterranean here, man. Sarah, dude, thanks for this 46 primer. Cinderfall, thanks for the 48 primer. Welcome back, guys. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. True. What's up, brother? Welcome back, guys. Appreciate the love and support. True. Hope you're doing well, man. So this is just saying that your workforce is limited. They're trying to address this issue with air transport hubs. So now it's time.
Go to the corner!
It's time to go to the corner, but it's also time to vote on a law. So we'll take a second here again now. because this is actually what it looks like to pass a law rather than that first default one, which is just like,
Go to the corner.
which was just like, are you getting kicked out of the city or are you not? Zeebzen, thank you for the 56 primer. Ovi, thank you for the 56er, and welcome back. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much. Much love to you. Welcome back. So, there are 4. Go back for just a second. Yeah, this is less of a preview and more of a deep dive, so hopefully you guys appreciate this. I'm enjoying talking about it, so if not, I'll see you in like an hour. Okay, so there are 4. I think there might be one more from the beta. I can't remember. Anyways, there's 4 major law sections for your city that you can govern. Survival, economy, society, and rule. So they opened up the survival. Within the survival one, there's subcategories of what type of survival. Are we focusing on resources more? Are we focusing on Frostland, aka the exploration for our scouts? Or are we focusing on like worker efficiency? So you can hover over each one. It says what it does. It says what it'll benefit. It says what the negatives are. And yes, you can change laws later. So they're going to go through it a bit more here. All of these unknown ones, by the way, I think the majority of them, if not all of them, you unlock via research as well. In some of the research specific areas. And it doesn't stop just here, right? Because you look, for instance, at like usually having a law is better than no law, right? Because you need something. So you look at this one and you go, wow, exploration time decreased, materials output per capita increased, heat demand decreased. Like this sounds great, but what's going to happen? One faction is going to hate this law. So doing this is great, but one faction is going to be like, screw you for doing this, and then you're going to run into other problems. Domino effect. Funerals, blah, blah, blah. You remember from the first game, too. Like this one I didn't play around a lot with. And haven't seen in the beta much, so we'll be exploring that one probably together once the game comes out. Critical Phil, dude, thanks for the 32, man. And welcome back. So, they have opened up the survival, and they're going to vote on a food additives law. There are 2 options here. You can hover over each. It'll tell you which faction supports it, which one doesn't. It'll tell you what each one does. It'll tell you how many people support it. Same as before. For, hesitant, against, etc. Was the last one dark mode? I think it's like a bit more of a special law area. It's not exactly like these ones, but I didn't get to explore it very much, so I don't have much to share on it. So they decided on this law, just like before. You have for, hesitant, against. Now, in this case, he's already had 46 guaranteed supporting this, okay? So they could just kind of hope that by voting, without needing to negotiate and promise something to someone, like another faction, or pressuring them and making them hate you more, but guaranteeing the vote, they're feeling confident that of the 32 people remaining, probably at least 5 are going to vote for my shit, right? Maybe. I don't know if they actually click vote or not, but that is a gamble you can take. They're going for it. So, we'll see. There it is. Wow, a lot of them did. 65-4, so they're good. Can you murder everyone that disagrees with you? Maybe. But you won't live to tell the tale. Okay, so that's enacted. Law is passed. You can see, by the way, I forgot to mention earlier, once you open up the ability to pass laws and to do research tree stuff, it's updated in the UI here at the building UI at the bottom. So you have the little law thing. I think it's by default a 10-week cooldown, so you can only vote on a new law every 10 weeks. And the research time will vary depending on what you're researching. So the black bar fills up, and once it's full, it's ready to be used again. These are the building menus here. Quick segue, which is actually important for you guys. Very important for you guys. To do with this law, particularly all the voting and the law stuff. So it was announced, unfortunately for me, it was announced at the event that they are doing Twitch integration into their game. It just came hot off the embargo now. I can actually share it and not almost accidentally share it for too long. So there's going to be Twitch integration on this. AKA the voting is going to have Twitch integration. I'm not sure 100. I don't know if they're sure 100% exactly how it's going to work just yet. But they gave us kind of some like mock-up stuff. So by the way, so of the 100 people that vote, I don't know what the priority system is going to be, but of the 100 people voting, it will literally be you guys. But it will say who votes for what. So if you want to be timed out, if you don't want to get banned, you better vote for what I want you to vote for, all right? No more anonymous voting, you motherfuckers. It's a two-way street now, all right? So they didn't share too many details because they said it was still like kind of a work in progress, but you can see here Twitch mode, Twitch, why am I forgetting? Twitch interaction. So it'll say who votes for, who votes against. But like I said, they don't have too many details about like, you know, if there's 200 of you, how does it choose the 100 voting? Can you repeat? I think that's all still like being ironed out. But the idea is they're trying to make it as obviously fun and interactable, and like people get to participate as much as possible. So all of this House of Delegates stuff that comes up can I don't know if fully, but probably fully be taken over by you guys. So you can see like this here. It might also just assign a certain percentage of chat to be, you know, like if 57% of the town is one faction, it might assign 57% of the chat to be that faction, and then randomly chooses of those 57 who get to vote on that law, things like that. So very cool. Twitch implementation. It'll be surely a lot of fun. But yeah. So Garrus mentioned it earlier. I just wanted to mention it while we're actually doing the law stuff. So as you saw there, all the hesitant vote for, that is going to be a lot of Twitch stuff in there. Are you strong-arming us? No. You guys are free to vote for whatever you want. It just depends if you want to keep chatting in this chat ever again or not, you know? Anyways, let's keep going. Okay, so now they're finally building the logistics district. You can see that they have 692 population because they built those air transport hubs that decrease the amount of population needed in neighboring districts pretty heavily. So now they have the minimum requirement of 600 people needed to build the logistics district, which is what they're doing now.
Remember,
You can do what you want if you want to go to jail.
are highly flammable. Arrange your cupboards carefully.
Boy, brainy. Speaking of people we're going to be banning, British people. So logistics is ready. Here is your view of the Frostland. It's a little more mappy and section-y than before because they've gone a little more into detail about this feature, period, compared to the first game. So immediately when you click on one of the first ones, for anybody who's played Frostpunk 1, it'll seem pretty familiar right away. So what does this one have? Well, there's basically inhabitants on the outside there, and if conditions improve enough, you'll get some extra population from the outskirts of the city. It'll tell you what it does. You can use 5 of your, you can see at the very top where my mouse cursor is, you can use 5 of your 15 Frostland units, Frostland teams, to escort the 2,000 people back, just like in the first game. When you've done that, then they'll become available again, etc. So that's another supply of population that you'll need because, well, I mean, just saw how hard it was to even build a building now. The UI will show your Frostland's team. That's right here. And you can start to go into the different major sections. So they decided to go into the, whatever that was, the Frozen Bay. In the Frozen Bay, there's going to be more stuff to do. They're going to launch an expedition, and then they're going to uncover the greater Frozen Bay area if they decide to go there. There's also the Highlands. They're probably going to go through all these right now. Tell you the possible findings, a little bit of lore blurb behind what's there, the amount of teams required. Now, as you noticed, they hovered back over. They have 10 teams left because they used 5 of them to get population. So by going here, well, they can't do it because it requires 20 teams, which is why they moused over there to show you that they only have 10 teams left, so they can't do this section, the Highlands. It's too big of a section right now. So that's going to have to wait. So they're going to go to the foothills next. This one requires 10. They have 10. Perfect. You can get cores, dwellers, and materials here, apparently. You could also go to the gorge. Requires 20. That ain't happening. So we're going to the foothills or the frozen bay, one of the two. Tells you the possible findings. They're going to send the expedition to the foothills, the remaining 10 that they have. Just like in the first game, the top right has kind of your information on the scouting and like the bar around the diamond. You know, when it completes, they've reached their destination, etc. All right, so we've skipped ahead a bit again. That gold one right there is indicating that they've finished going to the foothills. We just skipped ahead a bit here. He's frostbreaking some more area here so we can uncover more coal as well. Always keep taking a look at our temp. Temp was going up like 10 degrees or whatever degrees coming up soon. So, you know, we still got to manage all that kind of stuff. It's cold. We got to increase heat. We got to move, again, population, not people, but population around a bit here and there. Not as much micro, but it's still possible to do by closing districts or freeing them up with buildings, as you saw. Now that this foothills area has been explored, you can finally dive into the actual POIs of the foothills, as you can see. So there's kind of like a little campfire area and what looks like a little coal mining cart. Probably pretty important since we need to get coal. And by exploring it, you've exposed 3 bigger areas again, just like the area you explored. So then afterwards, you could go to the mountains, high pass mountains, other set of mountains, if you have the squad to do so. So you have 15 again, because you had 15 to start. 5 of them were sent to escort the 2,000 population back to the city, which they did. The other 10 were sent to explore this foothills area, which they did. All of them are free now. You have all 15 teams available. This says your population for your city, New London here. So you click around. What's going on? There's a rusted engine, just like in the first one. There's all these points of interest. Well, what happens here? What can we do? Okay, so he wants those 2 frost core engines. He used 5 of his teams. Here you can use another 5 teams in order to get another 1,200 people back to the base, and they did. And then this was the important one. This is the one I got to as well. Mining complex inhabited by children a long time ago. There you go, chat. Over the years, they grew older and became citizens of New London. The last miners were ordered home by the captain, but we know coal remains in the shafts. There are many old structures here. We can dismantle them for materials or leave them in place if we want to use the site again. So this is where you dismantle, or you can set up like a coal hub. There's a lot of hubs. A coal hub here, and then they're probably going to set it up, and then you can see the railroad system. So using the mine will take Frostland teams, 5 of them. You have 5 left because you just sent the other 5 out. And you will get a 100,000 material stockpile, which is quite a lot on this map, by the way. Or you can use the mine, or you can just not deal with this right now. They're going to use the mine, obviously, because they need coal. By selecting using the mine, an outpost here, they can build an outpost that increases their coal supply, and it has a 450k coal deposit, which is massive, considering that you start with like little shitter deposits in this particular map. So this is where the connect the trails mechanic comes in. That didn't exist in the previous game. Usually you just click select make outpost. You make a camp or an outpost there. Those scouts are locked in until the X weeks are done, and then you can use them again. Here is like similar, but it's a little more in depth. So you have to build a trail back to your city. And it matters, as I mentioned earlier, where you build the outpost in your city in terms of cardinal direction. You could have built, and I did, because I didn't know any better. I built it down here, okay? I built it on the south side of the city, or like southwest side of the city, which means that I had to pull this little string along all the way around the other side of the city. And every time you connect it to its max radius, it costs money. So every segment, I think, is like 25 scraps. So I had to pay a shit ton more because I didn't know that you have to build it closer, right? Nobody's going to know until you do it the first time. Then you're either going to luck out or you're not going to luck out. Obviously, they knew because they're the developers. Bastards. So they need to take their little string and connect it to this pin here, which is the north side of their city. Right, Mr. Animal? Yeah. All right. So there's the first connection, then it opens up the next radius. You kind of want to build like as far as possible. And they connected. So there you go. So now they're building, so they don't have to go all the way to the south side like I did. Janos, dude, thanks for the 50. So, their rep is obviously very good with the stalwarts. It's really bad with whatever the faction on the right is. And this trust is kind of yo-yoing around in that bottom bar. And tension, I think it was called tension, that kind of swirling red Diablo-style health globe. That's the one at the top too, and that rises with like, you know, cold and like all those other factors. So, they've set up the railroad there. That camp is now working. They should have like a better flow of coal. I think now it is in a second. Yeah, see, he's hovering over the coal. There it is. Perfect. Okay. So now heat went up because their increased coal finally arrived. He connected it first to a POI and then finally to the base. It's all connected. He has a shit ton of coal coming in. He's safe for a bit now. Just like Frostpunk 1, the more you play, the more issues start coming up. In this case, kids are evil. Don't have kids, basically, is what the game's saying. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, in this case, the kids are not being well taken care of. So, our children suck. We need to help them. Once again, then there's going to be a lot of laws we can pass about the kids. How do we take care of the kids? How do we raise the kids? What happens if we don't raise the kids? Crime is slightly increased, etc., etc. Squalor could have effects on disease as well. Send them to the mines. So there you go. So you can go to the family. Childhood, common rules for kids. You can either do a family apprenticeship or mandatory school. Both have their pros and cons, just like every law, like I've said a million times. Both have their pros and cons in terms of output and stuff like that in your city. Both have, you know, different factions that support it and different factions that don't like it. Both have different levels of neutral faction representatives that don't really give a shit about this one particularly, etc., etc. So look around at its effects, see what you want, see which one's more important to you in your current situation, see which one's easier to get with or without pressure, with or without negotiation. So he decided to pressure the delegates because he's well liked enough here. Ballsy move on hard mode, let me tell you. So they're well liked enough here. This way they don't need to negotiate with anyone. They do lose some trust, right? Trust went down a fair bit because he bullied them. But he bullied them, got what he wanted. We're good to go. So since that route is established, you can see how many weeks coal is going to be good for, etc., etc. Now let's look around. Let's explore. Let's see if we can get anything else. We can't, though, because there's no Frostland teams available. Everything else is minimum 10 to explore. So, what do? What do is you expand the district or you build a second district to increase the output of Frostland teams, Mr. Animal. Oh. This is a good thing. So, what happened? No, seriously, what happened, Chad? I don't know what happened. No, I'm just kidding. So what happened here, notice also how the city population went up because he keeps bringing people in. So they skipped forward here just a bit. What's this? Ruby King. For years, suggesting anything against the captain meant close scrutiny from stalwarts. But despite the bullshit booming from their bloody speakers, we managed to find a way, our own way, keep to our principles, stayed frugal, put families first, watched out for neighbors, continued our traditions. Now we have a council. Maybe it's time for us to stop dreaming and make a change. The council has inspired people to suggest new ideas about the city's future. So, this is the development and introduction of another faction. Now you have 4 factions to deal with. So, here they broke off of one of the main factions. The menu will come up in a sec, the screen. And it'll show you their quirks, what kind of goals they have in terms of laws to pass. Or not quirks, but whatever I said earlier. They're like traits or whatever, like adaptation, equality, tradition. It'll show you like what they value. It'll show you how much of the city they dominate now, 6%, how much they make up. They can also unlock specific laws or research nodes that wouldn't be available unless they pop up. And my understanding, it was kind of loosely explained, but my understanding is, I don't know if for story mode or not, or maybe just for Utopia mode, if at all. But this is one of the ways that they've added actually a bit of RNG or replayability element to this, is the factions. Like, I don't know if it's always literally the same faction branches that pop up, because there are many different factions, and they said a lot of them you haven't even seen yet, both based on the beta and this preview. But there is, like, it's not literally always the same factions every time, so it's going to throw a bit of a wrench in your program of just memorizing exactly how to build and beating the map every time, because you're going to have different factions and different desires to contend with, and as a result, some slightly different research nodes, etc., etc. Is there an endless mode? There is, like, there's a Utopia sandbox builder, which I believe can go endless if you want it, as far as I know. Hello, Toon. Thank you for the 70, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks for the Primarino. Janos, thank you again for the Primarino. Welcome back. Yeah, I think probably the Utopia mode. So anyway, so fourth faction has arisen now. I'm saying. So now you have to deal with them. They're a separate faction. They want certain things. They, you know, hate some things. They hate some people. When your research finished, it was a hub of the porn variety. So they researched this hub. It provides maintenance services, lowering material demand in neighboring extraction, logistics, and industrial districts. So you can build that for the neighboring ones, just like the previous one decreased the population needed to work in some surrounding districts. This one will decrease the material demand, which is the where my mouse is here at the top of the screen. It's clearly very heavily in red. So we're not meeting the material demands of the people. If I remember correctly, the black part of the bar is material demand that's locked for something. Like it's required for a certain building or something like that. And it's basically just like reserved. Think of it like reserving mana in PoE, that kind of thing. Or reserving magic in Hades too. Similar concept. So you can kind of hover over to the open spots, which they've intelligently saved some space from, so that they can, you know, see where they build, and they can kind of affect the biggest area. They consider that they didn't have a very good area built, so they're going to break a little more ice out in order to be able to build right in between all three of those districts and lower the material costs substantially there. These buildings are super important, these synergy buildings, which further emphasizes how important it is to build like properly in this game, because it's a really, really, really min-maxy game, especially on the higher difficulties. So there you go, they're building it. They expanded their district there so that they can get the full... Okay, so you notice, by the way, you notice here, what they needed to do was expand this district in order for this area to affect as many, up to 3 nodes as possible, this like synergy building that they're building. So they expanded this industrial area, the yellow, but the problem is because they wanted to build this building in the middle, it forced them to put some of the buildings neighboring, I think this is food, if I'm not mistaken, either food or residential. So you notice that there's this kind of red angry symbol. It's because, like I said, if you neighbor certain things together, they benefit, but other things can clash. Generally, industrial and extraction clashes with things like food and residential. So I'm not exactly sure what this debuff does, but it's something like increases squalor, like something bad. So they could have avoided this by, you know, chiseling a little more ice this way probably, and building differently and not as close, and by like as to have to pigeonhole themselves against a district that clashes with synergy. It's a Monopoly tune. I never played those ones, no, Jen. Have I thought about it? Not, I can't say that I have, but not for any like reason that I hate it or something. So heat demand decreased because the heat demand based on temperature is automated. If it's warmer, heat demand is less in houses, etc. If it's higher, blah, blah, blah. You have some tools you can crank, like when it gets cold. You can, I think, double the output on your generator, as I mentioned earlier. But yeah. Coal's running out. Everyone's freaking out. Gives you a couple options of what to do with the coal. Just like in the first game, they all have their own implications and benefits and negatives. There you go. If you hover over, it'll give you details of what happens based on each one you choose. Volunteer children. There it is, chat. The children can still go into the coal mines. Frostpunk 2 is saved. So now he's expanding the district, which will increase the coal output, but also add a second building slot. Remember what I mentioned about building slots and districts. So if he's not matching the amount of coal per like day / week needed, they can do that to crank. Here they're starting to research something else. Do they have a little... No, not yet. Okay. If I see it, I'll mention it. But I'll say it here. I don't know if we're going to be able to see it, but if you... The game UI keeps good track of, like, to remind you, if you promise a certain faction, let's say this, merit-based housing, or supporting, whatever. If you promise a certain faction that you will research something, there will be a small little symbol above here. That's like a hand-shaking symbol, like similar to this one here. That will remind you that you have to research this option. You don't have to, but you did promise researching this to a certain faction, kind of thing. Goodbye, Jackson. So here it tells you, once again, remember, now there's 4 factions. So oftentimes there will be at least 2 and up to 4, like, voices on what version of the research you're doing they prefer, whether it be policy or building. This is an economy thing. So one faction prefers that you research this, the other faction prefers that you research this. It doesn't cost any money because ideas, I think they're called, don't cost money to research, but buildings do, from what I saw. I can barely fit in here. That was a quote they took from me, by the way, and it wasn't related to the city, let me tell you. But they did decide to implement it into the game. It's very nice of them. So I was going through the different faction options. What can we do? If anything. Sometimes factions are so pissed at you that they don't want to negotiate with you. They just, like, hate you. Like the guys on the right with the red bar. Not doing so bueno. So the tension is not too bad. See, this is what I was saying earlier. It says laws slightly increased by infectious badge. General increased by squalor. Squalor, again, like dirt, filth, pollution, things like that. Disorder. Marginally increased, marginally increased. This is one of the questions I had. I was like, are you guys considering instead of marginally increased, it literally says like 1 unit of tension? And on purpose, they're leaving it a little vague like that because they don't want you to break it down to like a mathematical formula. They want you to kind of learn and understand the gravity of each, like, well, level of whatever they describe. Goodbye, touchpad. Goodbye, rail. So maybe time to explore a bit more. They have 20 teams now. This only requires 10 to go to the Frozen Bay. Probably because they've either expanded their current logistics district, which will take up 3 more spaces, just like any other district, but give you more exploration teams, or they just built their second logistics district. It's hard to tell because they're kind of like fast forwarding through this gameplay, you know? So just like before, you click around, you see what you want. Their coal is still okay here. They can turn it off, which they did. And they sent the expedition out. So now, their coal, I guess, is still good enough, surprisingly. I guess they have a shit ton of coal. Oh, they have a lot of coal because they did the children coal mounds thing. We just skipped ahead again, too. So, you guys can already see how this works. So, same thing here again. Do we want to build an outpost, or do we want to basically disintegrate everything for what's it called? For just resources. That little one. So there weren't too many options at the beginning when you first started your exploration, but as you can see, the map branches out like a fair bit bigger than Frostpunk 1, at least on average. The Frostpunk 1 like fall DLC was pretty darn big. This I haven't seen before because I got my ass kicked on this map several times. I have no idea what this is. Some kind of little cutscene, I guess, to show one of the areas. On the broken shore lies an odd derelict dreadnought. It seems to have been perhaps upgraded to run on oil. Oh, this is the dreadnought from... Oh, that's cool. This is the dreadnought from the first mission. Remember what we were doing? We were dealing with the dreadnought. So you, from New London... Oh, this is how the story ties in, actually. This is cool. I didn't see this. So from New London, you send an expedition team out, and you find the dreadnought where you build your first base in the first mission. Cool. They died, apparently. But they got the generator running. And we can now use the fuel that you established in that area. A whale mine. I didn't know my ex was in this game. Oh, god damn, dude. Call the police. There was a murder. Same thing as before. They've established a new outpost, so they need to drag this pin back to a main pin near their town. Click check mark. Spends the resources and materials for building. And there you go. They must be playing on easy mode, Chad. This looks chill. So their heat went down because they've mined out one of their coal deposits already. Usually have 2 at the start of this map. And I don't know what they did with their outpost on the outside. It might be off, it might be out, but they were in heavy need of coal. Now they're okay again. By coal, I mean heat at the top. They are digging through surplus, though. Okay, cool. So he has 2 coal mines active. He was able to build the second coal mine because he expanded his district by 3 like hexagons, which gives you a second building slot, which means you could build a second coal mine, which sharply amps your coal acquisition, but of course depletes the deposit faster too. So another issue with people being greedy. Decide if we're going to fund the people that are in need because they're poor, or fuck them. And if you do, then you're going to get less income of stamps. Okay, looks like we're fast forwarding again. So as you can see, the research tree branches out further and further. And it also shows you as you research which faction is benefiting more and more based on the type of thing that you research. So this like kind of half circle, I forget which faction this is more favored because you've been researching more of this. I think there might be a couple other factors that go into this too, but nonetheless. Rail hub? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, bro. What does one of the materials have an exclamation mark? I think it's because they were full and wasting materials. Like their supply was full. Their surplus was full. Storage, whatever. So the more you branch out research and direction, the more of the kind of like research map is going to be revealed as you do more and more. Oh, that idea costs money. Okay, scrap what I said about ideas being free. That one costs money. I'm not sure which ones are free and which ones aren't then. So I guess I need to learn that. 6 times the charm. Steward Dr. Thompson Morton, a teaching hospital surgeon, has, for the first time, saved the life of a patient suffering from appendicitis by removing a diseased organ. The students in Operation Theater broke into applause when the procedure succeeded. All 5 patients during previous attempts had died. Morton got lucky this time. We shouldn't make such a show of these surgeries. It's degrading and harden families, said one fellow surgeon. Morton disagrees, arguing this time is the most efficient way for students to learn procedures. What should we do? Classic Frostpunk stuff. So this game very much still has, like, the footprint of Frostpunk. It's just, there's definitely some different systems, yeah. I'm not sure what he just built there. Was that a hospital? I was reading the chat. I know, so you guys can see this is... Oh, there's only 16 minutes left, okay. Third left. So this is kind of the ebb and flow, at least on this map, right? Every map's going to present you with different challenges. I didn't see maps past this one. So he's just connecting. Yeah, there you go. He's just connecting the railroads. I didn't see maps past this one, so I don't know what else to expect, but it was definitely very, like, Frostpunk, like, story mode vibe from it, you know? So did Dr. Morton fuck up? I didn't see this before, so... Dr. Morton was teaching the teaching hospital surgeon who performed the first successful appendectomy. Has attempted the procedure again. Unfortunately, this time it failed. Our boy is butchered in a cacophony of students' comments and questions, said his grieving mother. This is inhuman. You allowed students to observe this risky medical procedure. Well, nice one, chat. This is clearly an option you guys would have chose. Generally. I don't think you get to vote on that, but... Alright, so they've connected that railroad too, just so they can keep bringing stuff back to town.
Consider a liquid diet to make organ extraction easier.
So, squalor, which I mentioned a few times, pollution, that kind of stuff, disorder. You can see in the bottom right, it says extraction district was damaged due to excessive squalor and needs repair. Squalor is something that doesn't really seem like a big deal at the beginning, but if you let it run rampant, and the measure of how shitty and bad it is are these 5 things at the top, the more heavy and black oozy they are, the worse the situation. This middle one is, if I'm not mistaken, this middle one here is squalor. So it's pretty bad right now. And what happens is increased squalor can have a lot of negative effects, but one of them is it can basically shut down and damage a district. And this is a twofold problem. One is the district is not working, so if it shuts down the fucking coal industry, you're screwed, right? Because you're not getting heat. But secondly, it's quite expensive to repair. I don't know if it varies based on difficulty, but it was like 100 stamps to repair a district when it broke down. So there was nothing in this game, at least to be fair, with my fairly brief time playing it, but there was nothing in my experience that was like, oh, this isn't such an important factor. We can kind of just ignore this. Like, everything was pretty friggin' important. Materials were important. Squalor was important. Goods were important. Money was important. Population, blah, blah, blah. Like, you really did have to very well balance stuff. Otherwise, something very easily spirals out of control. So, that district is screwed. In fact, it is actually their coal district. Okay, they repaired it. It cost a lot of money. And they repaired that one, too. And now they have to... Oh, there's no more deposit here. So they've mined out the entire deposit. Which is what that exclamation mark is above it. And he chose to demolish it, which gives you some of the materials back, some of the resources back, and gets rid of that area. Because what else are you going to do, right? The deposit's gone. Clearly siding pretty heavily with one dude here, one of the dudes here. And you always got to, you know, just like in the first game, you always got to keep an eye on like research and laws being done so that you can get started on the next thing. Now, one thing I kept getting caught in, if you don't pay attention, is basically making promises and negotiations at the law and doing things like, yeah, don't worry, bro, I promise that I'm going to research, you know, whatever you just wanted me to research, which takes 25 weeks. Not paying attention to the fact that I'm currently in a research right now, which let's say takes another 15 weeks, and to finish his research takes 20 weeks. So I literally didn't even have time to research what they wanted me to research. So I kind of screwed myself. So it's not always necessarily the best thing to just like laws on cooldown, next law, especially as you go later in the game. You might want to hold on to the CD, right? Ooh, I gotta pee. Hi, roll.
Some chemical additives are highly flammable. Arrange your cupboards carefully.
Also, one thing to mention, I noticed this more in I noticed this more in Utopia mode. I don't think it's a thing just because of the exploration and story mode, but it might be a thing in later in some story modes. In the top right where it says population, 17.2k, and there's like a kind of dash symbol with a half full circle. So based on your like living conditions and things like that, if they're good enough, you can actually get that to like an up arrow, and what it does is it attracts new people to come to your city, your town. And that's a steady way to increase population, to get more workforce to keep like expanding your city and stuff. I don't know if it applies again to story mode because these guys are doing pretty well. They're probably on easy mode, let's be honest. But I haven't seen this arrow go up to increase population. Rather, the population they've been getting has been influx from meeting people in the Frostland. So it could be a Utopia only thing, or it could just we could have missed it through skipping. Or maybe it's like a thing, you know, later in some of the story missions. But that is like a thing in the game. That is a system in the game for population management. Directly correlated to your performance and city quality and stuff like that. Okay, so he's frost breaking down into one of the other districts there for logistics. So they can send out more scouts and obviously need some more material. So he's digging into that as well. With a nice wide berth. Now I'm curious, he built like a housing area at the top, all the way up here, near logistics. I don't know if those synergize, I never tried. Maybe they do, but must have done it for a reason. As you can see, there's a blue housing area and a yellow logistics, so I guess they do synergize. Must have built it there for a reason. For like heat, probably. Okay. Wait, what did he just build there? Materials depot. I haven't seen that before either. So he's building some extra buildings in his districts to make them more efficient. Just like using some of the buff buildings between districts to help. Like minus workforce there. Remember that's some of the area that caved out earlier. Oh no, that's a separate district, my bad. By overlaying the districts together, you have to get minus workforce synergy, just like you did with the houses for heat. Wait, I didn't actually see. I didn't go back far enough. Well, not this. Boy, Tara, what's up? There we go. Just want to see the building they built over here. Okay, so he's switching depot types so that you could have a higher capacity of stockpile. So remember, depots are like basically your storage capacity, and all the types for the basic materials exist, just like in the first game. So he's building that because he's like heavily overcapping materials right now. So he wants to pile the crap up out of those. Because the yellow bar is like basically full, which is your surplus. Yeah. Getting caught making promises? Yeah, don't do that. That you can't keep. Cool. Okay, so they're overlaying another district. He's trying to stay away from the blue district because of anti-synergy. Which, like I said, I think is Squalor, which already bit him in the ass, right? It destroyed a couple of his districts, and he had to spend a bunch of money to repair them. Now he's going to pass a law. And it seems to be a law that he promised somebody to vote on, because notice how there was no option this time to like look around the laws, see which one he wanted to pick. He clicked the law button, and immediately it already was one that they need to vote on. So likely they, in fact, we can actually check here. Likely that it's something that they promised earlier in some way. Frosh, what's up, brother? Baby subs? What do you mean? Like subs from Subway? Eat fresh?
The proposed law has been approved.
What's up, Blackfoot, man? Alcohol. Now we're taking. I didn't get to this either. Oh wait, it said what the negative thing is. I haven't seen this before. I'm curious now too. So we kind of expanded the housing district. So you had to repair it first because it broke because the squalor is out of control. Yeah, it's squalor. Industrial smog increases squalor. So now we will have more squalor. It looks like it's building up to 3 though, so I'm not sure what happens if you build only one neighboring one. If it gets the negative, like, ailment or not. Because for the benefits, you need to build at least 3 to get, like, the minus heat, stuff like that. And that one looked like it had 3 dots as well, so you might only need to build 3. Okay, that one's fucked. You might need to build 3, but yeah. So his, you can see his squalor is going insane. Like, the tail is whipping around and stuff. Yeah, there you go. Squalor is growing like it is a major problem. And a lot of that could have been avoided with, like, better building. But there's also just a ton of laws and research you could do that it can increase or decrease squalor too. Like, it's not just the building proximity that's giving him the negative benefit as well. Oh yeah, that's the only reason I ever lost maps when I was there, Blackfoot. Yeah, looks like they skipped a little bit ahead again. So as you can see, there's just like a ton to explore out in the world. Eventually you will cap the amount of scouts you can send out, just like in the first game. You can't just like get a crazy amount. I don't know what the cap is. It's whatever 3 expanded districts with buildings are, which is like, I don't know, probably 60 teams. A lot of stuff takes like 10 to 20 per interaction. We built a surveillance tower. This is well beyond how far I got, by the way, so this is all new to me as well, as I'm seeing this. Damn, it's expensive. Costs 100 now. So yeah, things get pretty intense, and as I said, the difficulty is there. Like it's really tough. It's already like pretty hard on normal. Like hard was ruthless. Just the factor of like the factions and stuff definitely throws quite a wrench in the mix compared to the first game where you kind of just memorized, like you kind of just got used to and memorized building order and like where you need to shift population to. In this one there's a little bit more a variable factor that makes each playthrough not literally the exact same. So although you can still largely be like, oh wow, I really did need to focus on coal first instead of materials, there will still be a bit of variance in terms of what the factions are wanting and which factions and all that kind of stuff. Fucking Stuart, I hate him as much as Adam. Damn, so he's got like 5 teams out doing things here. You can see in the top right in terms of the teams that are out exploring, the scout teams. Little one, he just shaped an M with stretching. Stuart. I don't know what the main goal is of this map, by the way. Oh, yeah, to establish... Damn, there's city. Downing his 3rd glass of poteen. So he had to have at least 50 oil supply in New London. So he had to establish a colony where you establish the first base colony and ship oil back. So that's the goal of this map, it looks like. I got as far as, like, find a sustainable fuel source, which in the end was the first map, which is very cool. I didn't realize that, so it's a really neat way to tie in the story so far together in the overworld. The visual effects on the black side of the coal is cool. Yeah, the visuals are great in the game, like, for sure. Really nice looking game. I just hope they snuff out any performance issues and stuff. For what it's worth, lowering the graphic quality and stuff didn't, like, make the game look terrible or anything. And it was totally fine. I don't think even the tester systems they put us on had the graphics cranked. I think I cranked it myself and it was still fine. Okay, so he's asking dudes to do shit. Dealing with the factions, especially the ones that trust him. Money exchange, etc., etc. In the world of Micro as well, you can't like click individually on hospitals and see which patients are there and how quickly they're recovering and stuff like that. That I can remember at least. It's just, you know, there's a hospital and it helps people recover kind of thing, but there's just such a massively larger population. I mean, what's the population in the city right now? Like 17,000 or something? 17.2 thousand? 0.2K? So, yeah. Definitely a bigger chunk to deal with. You can also see in the bottom left, once again, those like traits. See how some of the bars are almost full? And that's like been based on the factions they've been dealing with and that like them and the traits they've been researching, etc. One of the factions also really hates them. They're like almost a red empty bar. Two of them really don't like them. So you're gonna have to deal with something with those guys. Give them money or promise them a funding project or something. So he's really siding with one faction. That was interesting. I haven't seen that before. Why did they switch sides, the factions? Like one went to the other side. Which one was it? And you get to play this July 22nd if you order the digital deluxe edition, or July 27th if you just get the regular game. Yeah, here. So he does a promote. It will grow the numbers and gain seats in the council, and it greatly improves relations with them by publicly supporting. And once they do that... Oh, the other faction went to the other side, and I don't know why. I don't know what that means. I didn't realize sides made a difference outside of the two opposing factions. I guess all those factions are opposing the main one now is what that means. I've never seen that before, so I don't know what they do. My cam was blocking it? Oh, my bad, yeah. So the red bar faction now moved over to the left side of the globe. I assume it has to do with, like, which factions are kind of friendly towards each other and which aren't. Coffee, what's up, dude? Haven't seen that building before either. That's new. A lot of stuff I haven't seen. As for as much as I talked with you guys and said my knowledge of the game and stuff, I myself have only, like, really barely scratched the surface of the game, to be honest. I mean, you can already see it. Like, everything they're doing now, I haven't been this far in the second mission of the game, so there's lots of stuff. A lot of buildings, a lot of interactions, a lot of everything, man. A rail hub? What does it do? Oh, I want to see what it does. I haven't seen that building before. Probably some kind of, like, efficiency of extraction or something. Provides rapid transportation to citizens, shortening commutes and boosting productivity in neighboring districts. Ah, there it is. Cool. So it automatically builds from the closest home district to... Yep. Very neat. Very neat. So just like an efficiency check mark on building. More building synergy stuff, which there's probably a ton of, man. Like, I think the building goes a lot deeper than even I think it goes.
Keep you warm. Report all leaks and damages to the nearest maintenance office.
So now in terms of, like, his status conditions at the top, cold is getting pretty out of hand, right? Because the temperatures dropped a lot. Squalor's pretty bad still, but he's stabilized everything else. George Chapman, a man convicted of murder and sentenced to life in our punitive prison, has attempted suicide. Doctors are hesitant to waste their efforts on him, since brutal punishments meted out in prison will soon likely kill him anyways. The Pilgrims, however, demand Chapman be revived and serve his sentence. We cannot let cowards take the easy way out and evade justice, said one delegate. Order your orders. Allow him to die. Order doctors to revive him. What would you do, chat? Kill him. I didn't eat my banana. Forget about me, banana. I skipped ahead again, obviously. Revive him, then kill him. Now we're talking. How'd you like a seat in the House of Delegates? Brother. Damn. His cold is red now. This is the remains of the first town you built to try and survive. You can indeed have more than one settlement. As you can see, it says there you have to establish a colony, the Old Dreadnought. And then once you do so, ship shit from that one to your main town, your main city. He's building extraction districts here. I don't know if you actually have to do all the normal stuff here, though. Oh, you do. I lied. You have to build housing and stuff. Because I didn't get this far, so I don't know exactly how the gameplay is building their second colony. But there you go. I guess that answers that question. And then you have to establish at least 50 oil supply, and that comes from extraction districts on top of the oil tankers. High-rise housing district was damaged due to excessive squalor and needs repair. Later, like 75 money or whatever. Credits, stamps. I don't know how they're going to end this video. Is it going to be a failure or something? That'd be rather anticlimactic. Climactic.
Stewart!
Stewart!
Angry Frostlanders grow more radical. Repair relations. Community leaders can be allowed to encourage radicalization. Pilgrims are an effective organization. So he's condemning them and stuff. He's basically trying to dissociate. I don't know how you can do that. He's basically trying to dissociate the faction. Dissolve the faction, rather. By condemning them and encouraging them to move to other factions, etc. I don't even know you can deal with them that way. So I guess you can dissolve some. Makes sense. Sounds good. Oh boy, do I have to go pee. There are 30 seconds left in the video, and then I gotta go rush to the bathroom real quick. Starting to run out of fuel. Oh, there you go. Okay, so there's the menu from the Old Dreadnought, the second colony that they built. What to send them from New London to help them. And that's, I guess, where stockpiling helps a lot. And there you go. So he's sending the oil from there. He's sending materials and goods over there to make the people happy and let businesses run. Districts run properly. There it is. And as a result, he's sending the oil. And then that was the end of the map. They won the map. Alrighty. So, yeah. So that's more or less it for everything. There's just some like screenshots left over, but it doesn't have any information you haven't like seen yet. There's just pictures of the first map and some of the second map. We've seen Old Dreadnought. Pictures of the city. Here's like, you know, one of the new factions joining. I think these ones are different. Yeah, the Evolvers. I don't think this is the one that came up in the video. House of Delegates, etc. Cool. So, that's basically all, and honestly beyond what I know and experienced on account of, I mean, just the last like 10-15 minutes of the video we were watching together. I was like, oh, cool, what's that building? I haven't seen that. Oh, how's that? So, yeah. And that even gave me a better sense of just the amount of, like, there is actually quite a bit of building min-max from what we can see, and pre-planning with your building Now, it'll probably be a little tougher at the beginning because you're not going to know that you have to pre-build all these kind of things. But once you do, like, it is, you know, building position does become pretty darn important. But yeah, game's looking great. I think it's going to be a banger of a game. I just think, like I said, if you're just super duper married to the systems of the first game, and like, you know, your absolute bread and butter was putting children in the coal mines and moving micro unit one by one between buildings, that this game just does not offer that anymore. So if that was the only thing you liked, you're probably not going to like this game. But overall, just the game itself is it's going to be a banger, and it's very hard. Like, it's like legit pretty damn hard, like harder than the first for sure. Again, in my brief experience, but that was enough exposition to see like how nasty it can get, for sure. Definitely doesn't slouch. No, it doesn't slouch. It definitely boldly goes up strong and surpasses it and adds like a bunch of new stuff. But inevitably, there are definitely just some systemic differences between the two games. So, yeah.